Yes, this is going to be another video about Hasan Piker. I'm Hawk. Thanks for tuning back into my page. It's about 3:30 p.m. on Friday, April 10th, West Coast time. We've been watching this unfold for about 2 or 3 weeks now, and it is a coordinated campaign. It is being led and funded by a center-left, centrist Democratic think tank group called Third Way. It is being coordinated with Democratic members of the House and the Senate. It is, it's like I always try to choose my wording carefully because I fear that if I just speak plainly, then people are going to certain people, organizations are going to reflexively refer to me as being anti-Semitic when I am not. I condemn all forms. So let's just lay out some caveats. I condemn anti-Semitism, actual anti-Semitism in all of its forms. I condemn Hamas. They are a terrorist organization who should be wiped off the face of the planet. I condemn what they did on October 7th, 2023 inside of Israel. If you are attacking, murdering, kidnapping, raping unarmed young people at a music festival, you are not a freedom fighter. You are a fucking terrorist. I condemn in equal terms, at a minimum, equal terms, what Benjamin Netanyahu and his government and his military have done every day since then inside the Gaza Strip against Palestinian civilians. I don't think we're ever going to get an accurate death toll from inside the Gaza Strip, let alone what they're doing through settlers in the West Bank. A pox on all their houses. And there is nothing in anything that I just said that implicates the Jewish people, the Jewish religion, Judaism itself, or anti-Semitism. All of that having been said, I believe the current campaign that's being waged against Hasan Piker to try to discredit him is primarily about Israel. And AIPAC Democrats coordinating with outside groups that are funded in large part by heavily Zionist interests. It is about crushing the left. It is about crushing progressives. It is about crushing dissent from the left. It is about crushing criticism of this current Israeli prime minister, this current Israeli government, this current Israeli military. I don't understand how you can look at it in any terms other than that. Hasan Piker, love him or hate him, and by me criticizing this campaign that is being done to him, I see clips of Hasan Piker. From what I understand, the guy live streams like 8 hours a day, 5 or 6 days a week. I don't have that kind of time for anybody. And me condemning and criticizing this campaign that is being waged against him is not by any stretch of the imagination me endorsing literally every single thing that Hasan Piker has ever said. I haven't heard every single thing that Hasan Piker has ever said. But I did see an 8-minute long segment on CNN from Jake Tapper criticizing Hasan Piker, and he had his laundry list of bullet points that he got from Third Way of horrific things that Hasan Piker, taken at face value, horrific things that Hasan Piker has said. Taken at face value means also taken out of context. I don't know if there is certain context that could be lent that would change the meaning of some of the things that he said, but I heard that exact same laundry list from Dana Bash also on CNN, when she did an 8-minute long segment going after Hassan Piker. I heard that same laundry list from Sarah Longwell on the Bulwark a week ago Thursday in a video. She had a conversation with Tim Miller. I have followed the Bulwark for quite some time. I disagree with them frequently in some of the things that they say, but they have really, really good columnists working for them. And they put out a lot of good content. And I like Tim Miller, personally. I appreciate his evolution on this issue over the last year and a half. I mean, I remember frequently a year and a half, 2 years ago, listening to his daily podcast, and he would talk about student protesters on campuses and just blanket label every single one of them as pro-Hamas anti-Semites. And it used to make me fucking crazy. Seems to have moved on from that position. I think that's a good thing. He's now openly questioning America's relationship with Israel. I think that's a very, very good thing. And it turns out, so in 2022, roughly 50% of Democrats polled had negative views towards Israel. 2 years ago, that number had gone up to over 60%. In a recent poll released by Pew, Democrats generally polled Democratic voters this was within the last 2 or 3 weeks, had 80% negative views towards Israel. In that same poll, Democrats aged 18 to 42, that number gets up to 90%. Republicans aged 18 to 42 currently have an almost 60% negative view of Israel. And when I say that, I'm not saying Israel as a country, is Israel, Judaism as a religion. I'm talking about Benjamin Netanyahu, the current Israeli government, the current Israeli military, how they've conducted themselves since October 7th, 2023. It's policy decisions, it's practices. It has absolutely nothing to do with Judaism, the Jewish religion, the Jewish people. It is policies and practices of a government and a military and a prime minister. And just remember, in late 2023, early 2024, Jonathan Greenblatt here in the States, who has never seen a person, object, or entity that he couldn't label as an anti-Semite, was recorded on a conference call saying that the rising negative perceptions of the Israeli government and the Israeli military is not a left-right issue, it's a generational issue, old versus young. And he said, we have a generational problem and we have a TikTok problem. And AIPAC got on the case and opened up a fucking fire hose, allegedly, of money directed at Republicans and Democrats in the House and the Senate. And within 2 months, we had the TikTok ban legislation pass the House, pass the Senate overwhelmingly. Joe Biden, who is a self-proclaimed Zionist, signed that bill into law. It had nothing to do with control from China. It had everything to do with Israel's war inside the Gaza Strip. So that polling, 80% of Democrats now view this current Israeli government and military in negative terms. That number goes up to 90% when it's Democrats between the ages of 18 and 42. And then all of a sudden now we get this campaign from Third Way, started, organized, funded by Third Way, involving elected Democrats like Alyssa Slotkin, Ruben Gallego, Cory Booker, and others, and Dana Bash, and Jake Tapper of CNN, all coordinating with the same exact talking points, and Sarah Longwell from the Bulwark. I was stunned and completely fucking gobsmacked at the things that Sarah Longwell had to say in her conversation with Tim Miller. I was incredibly disappointed with a lot of the things that she had to say. And I'll leave it at that. It was, I mean, and I'm not the only Bulwark follower to feel that way. Go to their YouTube page and find that video. It's dated probably Thursday, April 2nd. It's like a 45, 50-minute long conversation between Tim Miller and Sarah Longwell, and read the comments on that video. Read the comments. Read the comments. They are enlightening, to say the least. But she had that same fucking list of talking points. Neither Alyssa Slotkin, Cory Booker, who claims that he didn't even know who Hasan Piker was, Ruben Gallego, Jake Tapper, Dana Bash, or Sarah Longwell have ever spent any appreciable amount of time consuming Hasan Piker's content. And when commenting directly about Hasan Piker and his content and his comments, neither Jake Tapper nor Dana Bash invited Hasan to come on and be interviewed about those comments, because, why allow someone to add context or rebut those types of accusations of anti-Semitism, racism, bigotry, and misogyny? Why would you invite someone when you're a journalist and you're leveling those accusations at someone? Why would you bother to have them on and interview them and ask them about those specific quotes? So it's a fucking hatchet job. Again, this is not me endorsing Hasan. This is not me endorsing things that he has said. But when you're a fucking journalist and you do that kind of a report on somebody like that, someone who is alive and well and who engages with the media on a regular basis, you ask them to come on and give them the opportunity to respond to the accusations that you're making against them. If you're not, then that demonstrates that you have an agenda. And that's an agenda that just happens to coincide with third way and centrist AIPAC Democrats. It is about Israel. It is about crushing the left. It is about crushing progressives. And I have said this many times, that organization, Third Way, a center-left, centrist, democratic think tank, funded at least in part, from what I'm told, by Zionist billionaires, is going to spend between $30 and $50 million between now and Election Day 2028 against progressive candidates and against progressive voices like Hasan Piker, who has been passionately speaking out against what Benjamin Netanyahu, his current government, and his current military have done inside the Gaza Strip and the West Bank since October 7th, 2023. This whole campaign is about silencing that voice for that reason, for expressing that perspective and being that critical of Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli government, and the Israeli military. Again, it has absolutely nothing to do with Judaism, the Jewish people, the Jewish religion at all. And again, it's like AIPAC, thankfully, has become so toxic on the left and so toxic to Democratic voters that in the last round of Democratic primaries in Illinois just 2 or 3 weeks ago, AIPAC was flooding Democratic primaries in at least 4 congressional primaries in that state, but they had to change their name. They had to come up with new organizations like Women Concerned with Freedom or some shit like that. I don't know. But they weren't able to do what they normally do under the banner of AIPAC, because that is now toxic to 80% of Democratic voters and 90% of Democratic voters between the ages of 18 and 42. And AIPAC was not successful in a lot of places in those Illinois primaries. And recently in the New Jersey congressional primary, there was a guy named Tom Malinowski, who is a centrist Democrat, totally reasonable, rational, logical guy, he had been voted out a couple, 2 or 4 years ago, I can't remember which, and he was running to reclaim his seat. And in the course of that campaign, and he is a Zionist as well, and he in the past had voted to arm Israel and send them military aid and continue the $4 billion a year gravy train that we send to Israel with no strings attached whatsoever. He said, I'm not comfortable with continuing to send unlimited military aid to Israel with no conditions. It can't be unconditional anymore. And even though he said he still supports Israel and still supports what they're doing, he just said the aid can't be unconditional anymore. And so AIPAC spent something like $2.5 million against him in that primary as a warning to every other Democrat across the country, and ended up with a very progressive, pro-Palestinian candidate winning that Democratic primary. They didn't care that that person was going to win that primary. They wanted to punish Tom Malinowski for saying aid should be conditional as a punishment for him and as a warning to every other Democratic candidate throughout the United States. But voters vote. And 80% of Democratic voters now view the current Israeli prime minister, government, and military and AIPAC as toxic. It is a bright line for Democratic voters now. Democratic voters want to cut ties with the nation of Israel and want to end all aid, military or otherwise, to Israel. And it's just like, you got to wonder if there is ever going to be a time when DNC, AIPAC, establishment, corporate Democrats stop ignoring what their voting base actually wants. It's because those kinds of Democrats, establishment Democrats, the DNC, have ignored their voters and their voters' demands for so long that the Democratic Party itself, even in the context of the current circumstances that we're living in, we're in an illegal, unconstitutional war being led by a convicted felon, adjudicated rapist who went in with no fucking strategy, no fucking plan other than blow things up. Even within that context, the entire planet being thrust into a global recession, our economy is fucking cratering. People can't afford housing, gasoline, groceries, healthcare, health insurance, college. Nothing is affordable in the United States now. Even within the context of all of that, the Democratic Party itself is polling at somewhere around 20% favorability. 20%. Because they ignore their base, and they have ignored their base in favor of the DNC, in favor of their corporate interests, in favor of AIPAC for years. 4 years. And I think that, I think that these AIPAC Democrats are going to run into a fucking buzzsaw in the primaries this year and in the general elections in November. Because when you have between 80 to 90% of the Democratic base saying no on one particular issue, that is a pretty fucking bright line issue right now, currently, given current circumstances of right now and of the last 2.5 years. And candidates like Alyssa Slotkin are just going to ignore that. I don't know if she's up on the ballot this year. Maybe that's why she's speaking out, because she's not on a ballot this year. But Ruben Gallego is. And Cory Booker is going to be in 2028. I mean, he gave about an hour and 20-minute long interview last Sunday with John Lovett of Pod Save America. And I listened to the whole thing, and it was fucking infuriating. And here's a perfect example. So the DNC yesterday, they had their meeting, and then they vote on things. They vote on things like for the platform, and they vote on this, and they vote on that, like as an organization. And one of the things that they voted on yesterday was a non-binding resolution to reject all funding from AIPAC. And as kind of a rhetorical thing, and so that they don't have to deal with the question of AIPAC in particular, they're like, well, we're going to reject all PAC money funding. So they just lump AIPAC in with everything else. And that way they never have to address that specific issue. But they had a non-binding resolution to reject AIPAC money specifically, and it failed to pass. It failed. When 80 to 90% of the Democratic base is like, reject this money now. 80 to 90% of the base was in favor of that resolution, and it failed. It failed to pass. They don't give a fuck what members of their voting base think. They don't care what they want. They've ignored their voting base for years. And when Cory Booker was doing that interview with John Lovett asked him specifically about AIPAC and money from AIPAC. And Cory Booker didn't answer that question. He said, we have to solve the two-state problem in Israel. We have to make the two-state solution a reality. The problem is much bigger than just one lobbying organization. And he went on to speak very passionately and very effectively about the need for a two-state solution, which is curious to me. You know, because I've seen speeches that Cory Booker has given to AIPAC and related organizations. I've seen that video of him partying with Rabbi Shmuley literally on his back, giving him a piggyback and dancing around a room. Current Israeli government, the current Israeli prime minister, has absolutely no fucking interest whatsoever in a two-state solution. Benjamin Netanyahu has said that explicitly. Israel is an apartheid state. It has been since 1948. There are two sets of laws. There are two sets of roads. I mean, settlers kill Palestinians with impunity inside the West Bank. They murder them. They steal their homes. They bulldoze their homes. Zero consequences. Zero consequences. And it's like, that's what these Democrats are supporting. That's what these AIPAC Democrats are supporting. And as more and more and more and more and more of that information has made its way out to the world, the Democratic base, the voting base, the actual people who vote for these candidates is like, no, not doing this. Not doing this. And the DNC doesn't fucking care. And so it's like the voting base of the Democratic Party has shifted dramatically in the direction of Hasan Piker's politics. Not just as it relates to Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli government, and the Israeli military, across a whole healthcare, health insurance, livable wages, minimum wage, any issue that you can imagine that Hasan Piker holds an incredibly progressive view on. That's where the base is going. And the establishment Democrats do not like that because they can't control what Hasan Piker says. They don't have daily briefings with Hasan Piker and give him that day's talking points like they do allegedly with chorus creators. And we've seen all those chorus creators all over TikTok. There's no daily briefing for talking points coming from the DNC or closely aligned DNC organizations or funders. They can't control what he says. And what he says, whether you like it or not, and again, I'm not endorsing him or it, what he says, he resonates specifically with voters on the left who are under 30 years of age. The exact demographic that Democrats need in order to win this fall. And so the establishment, DNC, corporate, AIPAC, Democrats, and their outside groups like Third Way are now attacking him and trying to discredit him and the left and progressives. And they're spending tens of millions of dollars to do it against people on their own side, to silence those voices, to force people to get in line, largely because of how critical he has been of Benjamin Netanyahu and the current Israeli government and the current Israeli military. And, you know, if you want evidence for the fact that elected establishment, corporate, AIPAC Democrats have ignored and not listened to their base for years and years and years, I can sum it up in two words. Incremental change. One of my mutuals, I can't remember her at, God damn it, I can't remember her at, said this in one of her videos the other day, and it really, really got me thinking. It's like, we need an increase in the federal minimum wage, incremental change. We need single-payer healthcare, incremental change. You know, we need dramatic changes to fix homelessness and poverty in this country, and child poverty, incremental change, incremental change, incremental change. You pick the issue, and establishment Democrats will look at you and say, incremental change. We need to make small changes over time, incremental change. Donald Trump has just exposed the lie of incremental change. Donald Trump has done more in the last 15 years of his presidency, more dramatic change just by fucking doing it. It's all been horrific. It's all been fucking horrible and terrible and destructive, and people are dead. But Donald Trump didn't do any of that incrementally. He just fucking did it. So it's like anytime you hear any of these kinds of Democrats come at you again and say incremental change, take that into consideration. And as far as like, you know, like in that same interview with John Levitt, I don't mean to pick on Cory Booker. He's just the one that these questions just came up for in a lengthy interview that I watched about a week ago, as he's out on his book tour. John Lovett asked him specifically, it's like, well, first of all, if you don't know who he is, why would you refuse to go on his show? And Cory Booker was like, well, I've never been invited. And he threw his own comms person under the bus. I'm confident that Hasan Piker would invite Cory Booker to be on his program. I mean, my God. and you know, and Ro Khanna has made this point multiple times that I've seen, as has Tim Miller from the Bulwark. It's like Theo Vaughn had on J.D. Vance and Donald Trump on his podcast leading up to the 2024 election. Joe Rogan did the same thing. So many of these bro podcasters had on Trump, had on J.D. Vance. I mean, the 3-hour-long episode that Donald Trump recorded with Joe Rogan got 60 million views. And it was Donald Trump spouting off his bullshit in a way where he was completely unchallenged, because Joe Rogan is a mental potato. He has the intellectual curiosity of a fucking dog turd, unless it comes to COVID lockdowns and COVID vaccines. In that case, he has a tremendous amount of curiosity, but it's coupled with an unimaginable amount of stupidity. And so Ro Khanna is like, you have to go into these places. And Tim Miller's been making this point too. It's like Democrats should be all over these fucking podcasts, especially now leading up to the midterms. We've had 15 months of Donald Trump's policies. We're 5 or 6 weeks into a disastrous war in the Middle East. Now is the time for Democrats to go on these podcasts and explain to that audience, those audiences, how all of this shit went so incredibly fucking wrong and how they were lied to and how they were betrayed by Donald Trump. And it's mind-boggling to me still to this day, the lack of any response from so many Democrats. It's fucking mind-blowing to me. It is absolutely mind-blowing to me. In April of 2026, and we still have these Zionist AIPAC connected organizations that are, to a very large extent, having a completely unacceptable level of influence over democratic politics. And the number of elected Democrats that are afraid to speak out against that and speak out about that. And I think the only thing that might have any impact on them moving forward, I mean, you're not going to find 80 to 90% of Democrats who agree on anything other than Donald Trump is a horrible president and should spend his life in prison. The only other issue, I think, after the last 3 years that you're going to get 80 to 90% of Democrats to agree on is that we need to cut ties with Israel. And Israel, through these organizations, is having a completely unacceptable level of influence over democratic politics and an unacceptable level of control over democratic politics. And again, that has absolutely nothing to do with the Jewish religion, the Jewish people, Judaism. It's not about that. It's about a foreign government controlling our politics here in the United States through PACs and lobbying organizations. It's about foreign influence over our politics. There is no other foreign country that controls as much of our politics as Israel does. It just doesn't exist. And stating that plainly and factually is not anti-Semitic in any way, shape, or form. It is just factually correct. And I think all of these attacks on Hassan Piker are related directly to that because he is so outspoken on what Benjamin Netanyahu, the current Israeli government, and the current Israeli military have been doing for the last 2.5 years in the Gaza Strip, to their surrounding neighbors, and now in Iran and southern Lebanon. It's all related. It's all related, and it's all about that. And it's the milquetoast Democrat version of like Fox News in trying to make you angry about something, but doing so in an incredibly ineffectual manner that is going to backfire spectacularly. I asked this question in a video that I made earlier today. It's like, it is a very well-established fact at this point that Donald Trump's MAGA voting base are unimaginably dumb and gullible and loud and easily manipulated. That is factually accurate. They are the dumbest, most gullible, easily manipulated fucking people I've ever encountered in my entire life. And I think that the DNC corporate AIPAC establishment Democrat intelligentsia and consultants and groups like Third Way think that we on the left are just as dumb and gullible and easily manipulated as Trump voters are. I truly believe that they think that's true. And that we're too dumb to look past all the layers, that we're too fucking dumb to look up who funds what groups. We're too fucking dumb to see which candidates, who they take their donations from. They think we're too fucking stupid. They think we're fucking stupid. And I'm not a Democrat. I've been registered unaffiliated for 25 years. I'm not affiliated with either party, but I am a straight, cisgendered white man with a law degree. And so it's like, I haven't voted for myself, for my own interests in 20 years. I vote for candidates that will state flat out that they're not going to do things that will harm marginalized communities. I have every fucking privilege this country has to offer except for generational wealth. I personally will be fine regardless of who the fucking president is. Lots and lots and lots and lots of people that I care deeply about can't say that same thing because they don't look like me. And they don't love like me. And they don't identify as I do. And establishment, corporate, DNC, AIPAC Democrats, and their related organizations, they think we're fucking stupid. They think we're fucking dumb, and they expect us to vote for them and be happy and shut up about it. And not say anything that disagrees with or criticizes things that are important to them, which are their donors. So I've been rambling for a little bit now. If you have any comments, thoughts, or questions, please leave them in the comments, and I will do my best to engage with those as time permits. It's about 4:15 p.m. West Coast time on Friday, April 10th. The weekend is here. Please, everyone, be safe this weekend, and go have some fucking fun, man. Just go have some fun. Having fun right now is a complete act of rebellion and being a dissident. Just go have fun. Let Donald Trump choke on his hatred and anger. It's like the rest of them. Fuck them. Have a great weekend. Please click like, leave a comment, and subscribe to my page. And I'll see you guys soon. I'm Hawk. Take care. Thank you.